few other things about the Turkish medical market. One thing is it's always interesting how you're going to divide it up. Is it part of the Middle East? Is it part of Europe? Who's going to be the regional manager for it? Because it's not quite an Arab country. It's not quite a European country. And what I've found is typically the Turks would rather be part of Europe rather than part of the Middle East. But very often they get pushed into the Middle East and then they find themselves with everybody else speaking Arabic. So they're sort of like Israel. They fall someplace that isn't quite the Middle East and isn't quite Europe. So you have to look at it that way. What I've typically done is I've put them into Europe and I've had them managed by Europeans rather than Arabs. On the other hand, they are a Muslim country. On the other hand, they're typically not, well, they don't speak Arabic, and they're not typically as religious, for the most part, the business people you deal with, as Arabs from the Gulf. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Turkish economy, 80 million people, about $2.2 trillion GDP, something like 27K per capita GDP for the population, which means the size is something like Texas. The per capita GDP is something like Malaysia, more or less, to put that in perspective for you. And when you take a look at it, the diseases people have here are not poor people diseases. They're more like affluent country. They're lifestyle diseases. Pulmonary diseases, respiratory diseases, cancer, those type of things. About half the people here smoke. About a quarter are obese. About 60% are overweight. So you do have more lifestyle diseases rather than communicable diseases, waterborne diseases, nutritional diseases, other types of diseases of poverty. So you got to keep that in mind. And what are they looking at right now? They're really building up new hospitals for the middle class. 30 years ago, when I started to come to Turkey, when you came in from the airport, there were still thousands, tens of thousands of mud brick huts, in between the airport and downtown Istanbul. People lived like that. Grandparents and parents of people you're going to deal with today in Turkey lived in a dirt hut with no electricity and no indoor plumbing. Now virtually everybody in the country has indoor plumbing, 99% indoor plumbing. Running water. Most people have a connection to a sewage grid. Everybody has electricity, very high literacy. The middle class has gone a huge way in the past 30 years, and those people want good medical care. So we're building up more hospitals. What you're going to see is Turkey's going from about 200,000 beds of hospitals to an aim of about 400,000 beds, and most of those additional ones are going to be public-private partnerships driven by the public sector working with the public sector to create more hospitals for people, both who will have private insurance and who will have the local, the Turkish Social Security. Turkey, a few years ago, went with the CE mark, so now even if you have FDA, it doesn't matter, but you have to have CE. But once you have CE, you're in. The only thing you need really to get into the Turkish market from a regulatory perspective is CE and to localize your documentation. So everything has to be in Turkish. Remember, when you're ready to grow your international sales, reach out to us. We can help.
When you decide it's time to grow your international sales, call us.